It wouldn't be crazy to say that Pokemon cards recently have had their fair share of controversies over the past couple of years. I think starting with Logan Paul, there's been a lot going wrong, a lot of conversation around the little plastic things, or cardboard, I don't know what they're made with now. Back in 2020, when they were at the height of their popularity, you could have grown men swinging around cardboard lightsabers, taking down the kids as they scalped all of the Pokemon cards out of Walmart, making sure that no children could have any sort of fun whatsoever. And just recently, there's been a massive scandal. Apparently, people have been stealing Pokemon cards from the factory line. So they go in and they pluck out all the goodies, and that's why you haven't been pulling any good Pokemon cards recently, according to some people. However, the Pokemon Company does not seem to think so. They talked about this whole situation, said there's no indication that the integrity of the products were impacted after someone yoinked this many cards. Jesus Criminy, what's going on here? Man steals Pokemon cards as the largest theft the game has ever seen. Tries to sell us whole, but the law is super effective. What is going on with the title of this PC Gamer article? The law is super effective. This guy basically yoinked like thousands of super rare cards and then tried to sell it all in one go, like an absolute goofy goober. He slammed them down on the table and said, yeah, no, I just got really lucky. I must just be the luckiest guy in the world. I pulled them all, just randomly. Isn't that crazy? It's crazy that I did that legitimately. But unfortunately, the story that we have to talk about today is a little bit less good. In fact, it actually has to deal with a murder, which I think we can all agree is worse than stealing Pokemon cards. Or most of us can agree. There's gonna be that one guy. There's always that one guy. A man who beat his neighbor to death with Pokemon cards has been jailed. This all happened last year, but essentially, this man on the left slammed this man on the right so hard with Pokemon card tins that he ended up dying. This whole story is absolutely ridiculous. There are twists and turns in it that are just mind-boggling. So this whole story takes place in the UK and in Sheffield, which means that you already know something is going to go horribly wrong there. And the murderer is 31 years old, essentially got into a dispute with the murderee, who was 50 years old, because allegedly the 50-year-old had called the murderer nonce, which, if you don't live in the hellscape that we call the United Kingdom, essentially means he called him a pedophile. So Mr. Mentally Stable over here got really upset about that, told him to come out and got a bag of Pokemon card tins and just start smacking him with it. Just start smacking the guy with this Pokemon card tin bag. There must have been like 4 or 5 in there, and there must have been some pretty heavy duty tins, because I've got a tin right here. It might have been one of the bigger ones, if there are bigger ones. I can't imagine. I guess if you put like 5 of these in a bag and you started like pelting someone with it, if it was full, you could do some real damage with it. Now, apparently this guy had a history of mental health issues and had been self-medicating with weed and alcohol, which, listen, I'm not a doctor by any means, but I think if you have anger issues and mental health problems, I don't think a couple of Jaeger bombs is going to help that issue. And the derangement gets even worse, because after he had pelted him with Pokemon cards, he said he felt bad for him and returned to the scene after leaving to try and end his life with a wooden plank. So he left and then he came back because in his fugue state, he must have thought, oh, dude, he's just in so much pain. I should come back and finish the job. I don't know what kind of deludement sets you on that path. No matter how hard you hit someone with Pokemon tins, you don't go back and do more. Maybe if you come to a bit, you call an ambulance, but obviously I can't understand what's going on in this person's head. Sometimes you just don't get it. Sometimes they're just going off on a whole different path, or off on a different plane of existence. And if you ever thought for a second that the UK is in a good place and we understand what we're doing and have a good head on our shoulders, just look at this. The judge said that the case was a stark reminder of the dangers of cannabis use in such circumstances. Now, again, not a doctor, as this may come as a surprise, bit of an idiot here, but making a point that, oh, it was the weed what done it, even in a situation with a person with massive mental health issues, is just so strange to me. Like, if they didn't smoke weeds, maybe they wouldn't have mental health issues. I don't know where they're trying to go with that. Very strange that they'd even bring that up. Like, maybe it wasn't the weed that was causing the problems. Maybe it was the fact that he was self-medicating instead of taking the medicine that he was supposed to take, as a person with a psychotic disorder that went against the doctor's wishes and did something completely different, and also was drinking alcohol. I like how we don't mention the alcohol in this case. It's a stark reminder that we shouldn't smoke cannabis. What, he was a drinker as well? He was an alcoholic? That one's legal, so don't worry about it. It's okay. This demon is also completely aware of what they did. He later admitted to police officers that he got carried away during an attack and murdered him in cold blood. Getting carried away and murdering someone in cold blood is two completely different things. It's like saying, oh, sorry, I got carried away and drove into a crowd of people. Oh, whoops, sorry. Using get carried away in a sentence is like when you eat another slice of cake after you've already had two. It's like, oh, sorry, got a bit carried away with that cake. Or when you continue to make a joke even though the person getting joked about continually makes it clear that they don't like it. They're like, come on, man, stop. You're like, oh, sorry, I just got carried away. Not murdering someone in cold blood. That's completely different. But this isn't the only article about someone being killed because of Pokemon cards. This week, Florida cops killed someone over shoplifted Pokemon cards, and it turns out I'm a liar. This actually happened last year. So in true Florida fashion, people have gone completely off the deep end, and essentially what happened in this story is two men enter a Target because they want some pizza and Pokemon cards. They just want to have a good night, I assume, and they're like, oh, we'll do a little theft. We'll do a little stealing, actually. So they start stealing, and the loss prevention officer, which I don't really know what a loss prevention officer is. It just seems like we're just like making up jobs now. Do you just hang around and wait for someone to do thievery? That must be kind of a boring job. Sees these two, packing them into the bags, shoving the pizzas in, one pizza at a time, 12 slices at a time, getting the Pokemon card tins, shoving them in the bag, and calls the police. And the police in this situation, obviously coming off of the horrific tale where a man was killed by Pokemon card tins, thinks that Pokemon cards maybe are a deadly weapon. In a situation which resulted in the police officers blocking in the cars with unmarked vehicles, because the police a lot of times do have unmarked vehicles. They try to do a takedown on the thieveries, on the thieves that have the Pokemon cards and the pizza. Somehow, this devolves into a shootout, which, how did this happen? How did you get to this point? If someone is stealing Pokemon cards and pizza, just let them have a good night. I feel like essentially crashing into their car is a bit of an overreaction. Like, obviously you want to stop thieves. Thieving is bad. You don't want to do thievery, but it's not that much. It's not like they stole the crown jewels. They didn't steal a Rolex. But a takedown was attempted, which resulted in officer-involved shooting. But obviously, of course, every shooting is officer-involved, it feels like. The ensuing hail of gunfire described by witnesses on the scene injured both suspects and fatally wounded another. A fourth suspect was also detained, but it's unclear if they were charged. Now, the police officers, for their part, they said that they uncovered a gun in the suspect's vehicle. Nothing about it actually like being shot or anything, but that there was a gun in there. One of the people in that situation died, so he got shot and killed for stealing Pokemon cards, which is kind of crazy. The police officers didn't have any body cams, so we don't really know what happened exactly. The sheriff of the whole area said, I totally believe in my guys. They're the best. They're awesome. And now someone is dead. Thank God. I mean, it would have been terrible if they'd gotten away with it. Could you imagine? They could have pulled like a Raichu. They could have got a special Charizard. I mean, maybe they wouldn't have because the factory worker that was stealing the cards from the line. So they were, they probably weren't going to pull anything good anyway, to be fair. But what if they had the pepperoni pizza? Oh no. And according to a Dexerto article that I found here, the people that were shot at had their charges dropped. One of the suspects claims he had no time to respond to the police and he was hit multiple times in his hands because he held them up. And they charged the person that got killed for carrying an unlicensed firearm. Just gotta make sure that we hit all the beats, right? Just gotta make sure that everything is above boards. I don't know if you can really punish him for that now, though. It's probably just standard procedure, I imagine, to charge people even if they're already dead. But good news for the other two. The two survivors had their charges dropped. So I guess the only punishment they get is the shots in the hands. Do they get to keep the Pokemon cards? Was that returned to Target? Do they get the pizza? Not a very good trade, to be honest, getting shot at for Pokemon cards and pizza, but I'm a guy that sits in my house all day and play Pokemon and react to videos, so I'm not gonna tell a police officer how to do their job, but maybe we could try other methods than guns all the time. That's just the British in me speaking, though. If we're whipping out the Glocks to defend ourselves after someone grabs a pizza off a Target shelf and tries to run away, then maybe we've taken a wrong turn somewhere. Maybe we should evaluate this. Think about it a little bit. Anyway, the moral of the story is, if you're gonna steal Pokemon cards and pizza, don't do it in Florida.